Welcome to Africa Geotrends, your window into Africa's power, progress, and geopolitics. Asterisk before we dive in, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the stories shaping Africa's future. Africa has quietly moved to the center of the world's energy future, and the scale of global attention it is now receiving is not accidental. With more than $3 trillion projected in global energy investment, in a single year, the world's major powers corporations and financial institutions have identified the African continent as one of the most critical regions for the future of oil, gas, renewable energy, critical minerals, hydrogen, and energy transition technologies. For decades, Africa was described as a sleeping giant, rich in resources but underdeveloped, underfinanced, and overlooked in global planning. That narrative is breaking. Today, Africa is becoming the most contested, most strategic, and most important energy landscape on the planet. And what is happening now could reshape the world balance of power for the next 50 years. Africa holds roughly 30% of the world's known mineral reserves and more than 10% of global oil reserves. Yet it has been responsible for less than 5% of global energy investment historically. That imbalance is now correcting itself at unprecedented speed. International energy companies that once focused on the Middle East, North America, and parts of Asia have turned back toward Africa with renewed urgency. This is not just about fossil fuels. The new race is even bigger because the energy transition has created a massive demand for lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, rare earths, copper, and graphite. These are the minerals needed for electric vehicles, batteries, wind turbines, solar panels, semiconductors, data centers, and advanced military systems. Many of the largest reserves of these materials sit beneath African soil. The Democratic Republic of Congo alone supplies the majority of the world's cobalt. Zambia and Namibia sit on vast deposits of copper and critical metals. Zimbabwe holds lithium in volumes that are reshaping its economic future. South Africa controls some of the richest deposits of platinum group metals on Earth. Guinea is home to one of the world's largest bauxite reserves, essential for aluminum. Mozambique and Tanzania have massive offshore natural gas fields. Nigeria and Angola remain major oil producers while expanding into renewables and gas-to-power. Egypt has become a regional hub for solar and wind production. Morocco is now a global leader in concentrated solar power and green energy exports into Europe. Kenya is building one of the most advanced geothermal energy networks in the world. Ethiopia continues to develop one of the largest hydroelectric projects ever built on the African continent. From north to south, east to west, Africa has become the central laboratory for the world's new energy system. This is the real reason global powers are realigning their strategies toward Africa. It is about survival, growth, and control over the future of technology. The United States has returned to Africa with renewed strategic partnerships, energy investment programs, and support for local processing. China has never truly left Africa, continuing to fund infrastructure, railways, ports, power plants, and mining operations. Europe, under pressure to reduce reliance on unstable energy supply chains, is now accelerating energy deals with African nations, especially for green hydrogen, solar imports, ammonia, and rare minerals. Middle Eastern countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar are buying land, financing renewable projects, and investing in supply chains for future food and energy security. India, Turkey, Brazil, Japan, South Korea, and even new players such as Indonesia are seeking closer access to Africa's energy resources. Africa is no longer on the sidelines. It is the center of a multipolar competition. At the same time, African governments are no longer accepting old colonial-era agreements where raw materials are exported cheaply and imported back as finished products at high cost. A new mindset has taken hold across the continent. Countries are demanding local refining, local processing, local ownership stakes, technology transfer, and job creation. Nations like Namibia, Zimbabwe, and the DRC have placed new restrictions on unprocessed mineral exports. They want factories, not just mines. They want value, not just volume. This shift is forcing multinational companies and governments to renegotiate on African terms. This change in attitude alone represents one of the biggest geopolitical transformations in recent history. Energy is also linked directly to African industrialization and population growth. With more than 1.4 billion people and the youngest population on Earth, Africa represents the largest future consumer market in the world. To support this population in a dignified way, Africa needs massive amounts of energy. It needs decentralized mini-grids, transmission networks, modernization of aging systems, smart grids, data-driven systems, and resilient infrastructure capable of handling climate change. Investors understand that whoever builds Africa's power systems will shape its economic alliances for generations. Energy is influence. Energy is leverage. Energy is power in every sense of the word. This is where the concept of Africa as a battleground becomes clear. Not a battlefield of war, but of contracts, diplomacy, influence, and long-term positioning. Infrastructure projects are being signed at unprecedented rates. New ports are being expanded. Railways are being modernized. Power corridors are being discussed that could one day link African energy plants directly into European and Middle Eastern grids. Undersea cables, hydrogen pipelines, solar export schemes, cross-border energy trading platforms, and data-driven energy management systems are turning Africa into the backbone of a new interconnected global system. The African Continental Free Trade Area also adds another dimension. With trade barriers removed, a unified African market can support giant energy corridors that span dozens of countries. Power produced in one nation can be traded easily to another. Mineral processing can be distributed across regions. Manufacturing can scale. This integration transforms Africa from a collection of fragmented markets into a unified energy superregion. That possibility is what makes global powers pay attention. A connected Africa is far more powerful than a divided one. Climate change, often viewed only as a disaster, has added another strategic layer. Africa is one of the regions most impacted by climate change, but also one of the regions with the greatest capacity to produce clean energy solutions. Massive sun exposure, strong coastal winds, rivers with hydroelectric power, desert land for solar farms, and geothermal hotspots give Africa unique advantages. If properly developed, Africa could become the world's largest exporter of clean electricity, green hydrogen, and climate-friendly fuels. This would transform Africa from being seen as a vulnerable continent into the backbone of the world's sustainability goals. At the corporate level, energy giants are repositioning. Investment funds are creating Africa-focused energy portfolios. Startups are launching off-grid solar systems that power villages previously in darkness. African entrepreneurs are becoming pioneers in decentralized energy. Digital platforms are emerging that allow instant energy trading between regions. AI is being used to monitor grids and to predict output levels. Satellite technology is mapping new deposits and planning infrastructure routes. In many ways, Africa is skipping the outdated stages of industrialization and jumping straight into next-generation systems. This is another reason it has become so attractive. It is not just rich in resources, it is rich in potential. But with opportunity comes tension. Communities that sit on top of valuable lands want protection. Environmentalists demand sustainable practices. Civil society organizations call for transparency. Governments balance national interests against foreign capital. Competition creates friction, and in some regions, instability threatens progress. This is why governance, law, transparency, and regional cooperation are now more important than ever. Africa's rise is real, but how it is managed will determine whether it leads to lasting prosperity or new forms of dependency. The world is watching not only what Africa does, but how Africa does it. What is different today compared to the past is that Africa has options. 50 years ago, African countries had very limited choices over who they partnered with. Today, dozens of global players are offering deals, funding, technology, and access to markets. This gives African leaders leverage. It allows them to negotiate better terms. It allows them to demand respect, inclusion, and long-term benefit. This is a turning point in history that many people still do not fully understand. This is why Africa has become the hottest energy battleground on Earth. Not because it is weak, but because it is powerful. Not because it is desperate, but because the world is now dependent on what it owns. The minerals for electric vehicles, the land for solar generation, the rivers for hydro, the winds for turbines, the youth for labor, the markets for growth, the space for infrastructure, the data for planning, and the political leverage that comes with controlling future supply chains. All of it is centered on Africa. In the coming years, the world will see more summits hosted on African soil, more trade missions arriving in African cities, more embassies expanding in African capitals, more foreign delegations seeking resource agreements, and more African voices shaping global policy on climate energy technology and development. Africa will not just be discussed. It will be consulted, partnered with, competed for, and respected. The energy future does not run only through Washington, Beijing, Brussels, or Riyadh. It now runs through Abuja, Nairobi, Dakar, Kinshasa, Cairo, Pretoria, Windhoek, Addis Ababa, and beyond. The world may not have planned for Africa to rise this way, but history rarely follows a script written by outsiders. It is shaped by those who own resources, those who control movement, and those who sit at the center of global necessity. In the 21st century, energy is life, energy is industry, energy is sovereignty, and Africa stands at the heart of it all. The continent that was once underestimated has become the most important board on the global chess table, and every major power is now making its move. This is no longer a question of whether Africa will rise. That question has already been answered. The question now is how the world will adapt to an Africa that is no longer waiting to be chosen, funded, or instructed, but is choosing, directing, and shaping the future for itself and for the rest of the planet. And as the energy transition accelerates and the world searches for stability in an uncertain era, one truth is unavoidable. Africa has just become the hottest energy battleground on Earth, and the outcome of this new era will define the next chapter of human civilization. You've been watching Africa Geo Trends, where Africa's moves shape the world. If you haven't already, subscribe now and stay ahead of the next big story.